All right, this is the second show of the vlog. I guess that's what you call them, vlogs. I'm not real familiar with them. I watch reaction videos on YouTube and stuff, but this is the second one of my broadcasts of my life. Yesterday, today, and why just kill Jim. In the first video, I told you why just kill Jim. Well, let's go back to a day years and years and years ago, and I'm going to call this Chapter 1, Episode 20, because it's in my early life, but it's not one of the earlier moments I might tell about. But I was in 7th grade. In the 7th grade, I was a pretty small little kid, and there were some kids in my school. It went 7th, 8th, and 9th that were pretty good size. And there was one young man by the name of Chris. I'm not going to use any last names, but Chris was about 6'3" and probably weighed close to 265 pounds. He was a big, big kid. One day, when I was going to school, there was a spot across the street from the school that was on kind of a little field that had a home next to it with a little hill that went up to the home. And everybody would gather and sit on that little hill and smoke cigarettes or shoot the crap or get high. There was, I'm sure, somebody doing that there before the bell rang, because they could hear the bell from the school across the street to head in to be in class when the second bell rang. And one day I'm over there, and I'm walking past a young man. I can't remember what his name was, but he asked if I had an extra cigarette. And I said sure, and I stopped to give him one. Well, Chris was sitting down on the ground right next to this guy, and he looked up at me and goes, "What's your name, kid? Aren't you a little young to be smoking?" Because I looked probably 2 years younger than they were, than I looked. And I said, "My name's Jim." And no, I'm in 7th grade here. And he says, "Really?" And he stands up, and man, he just towers over me. Plus, he's standing on the upper part of the hill. And he looks down at me, and he hands me a baby food jar, an empty baby food jar. And he says, "Does your old man have any alcohol?" And I said, "Yeah." Because my dad did. He had a bar. He didn't drink very often, but he had a bar, and behind it he had whiskey, a couple brands of whiskey, scotch, gin, tequila. I mean, he had it all underneath there in bottles. And so I said yeah to Chris. Chris hands me the little jar, and he says, "Bring me some tomorrow. And if you don't, I'll kick your ass." Okay. Well, considering he was 2 feet taller than me and outweighed me by 200 pounds, I took the jar and I went home. And that when I had a moment where no one was around, I snuck into my dad's Wild Turkey bourbon. That was the one that had the most in it. Figured he wouldn't notice it. So I took the Wild Turkey and put it in the baby food jar and took it to school the next day and gave it to Chris. Chris was very impressed with the fact that I brought him back, and I told him it was Wild Turkey. He said, "Well, I'll just have to sip on this one." As I gave it to him. Well, school started. I was in class, doing my class, going between classes, and at one point between classes, Chris runs into me and says, "Come here." And I go, "What?" He says, "Here, bring me some more tomorrow." And he hands me the baby food jar. So, being the good guy that does not want to get his ass kicked by a guy, goes home. Later that night, I put some Wild Turkey in the baby food jar. Now you can tell there has been some Wild Turkey taken out of the bottle, but we'll get back to that later. Next day, I'd take the bottle back to my take the jar back to Chris. Thanks me. Tells me he'll get the jar to me again later so I can bring him some more tomorrow. And I'm going, man, my dad's going to kill me. And he goes, well, if your dad don't know, he won't kill you. But if you don't, I'll kill you. Okay, well, that makes more sense to me, my little 7th grade mind. So later that day, sure enough, he gets that jar back to me. And I go and take it home. And at some point, when no one's in the family room where I can do it, this time, though, I take the Chivas. Okay. Now, my dad very rarely drank, I can tell you. But I took the Chivas because I thought, if I take any more out of the wild turkey, he's going to notice it. Just walking past the back of the bar, he's going to look up and go, that don't look right. So I take the Chivas. Okay. And I take it to Chris. Well, sure enough, Chris really liked the Chivas, and he wanted me to bring him some more, of course, the next day. I get home that night, and I'm in my bedroom late that night. I'd already got the second jar of Chivas out of the bottle. When my dad goes into the family room, and I hear him say to my mom, Bonnie, have you been drinking the Chivas Regal? And my mom says, no, Bob, I don't drink that. It's crap. My mom never drank, ever, hardly, ever. I don't think I ever saw her drink a cocktail with alcohol in it. Okay? So my dad goes, well, somebody's drinking it. And then I hear my name called out loud, of course, because who else could it be? Surely wasn't my little sister, who was 2 years younger than me. Doubtful she's drinking Chivas in 5th grade. So I go out there, and my dad looks at me and goes, have you been drinking whiskey out of the back of the bar? And I said, nope, which I was telling the truth. He says, well, there's some missing. Do you know what happened to it? Now, I learned a long time ago with one thing with my dad. If you lied to him, you were going to get some physical discipline. You're going to get spanked. As you got older, it'd probably be a pop in the mouth. But if you didn't lie to him, chances are you weren't going to have any physical ramifications from him. Lying, you got it. Okay? So I knew not to lie to Dad, because once he found out, I was dead meat for sure. And I said, well, yeah, I've been taking it to school. And he goes, and are you drinking it? And I go, no. He goes, then what are you doing with it? And I said, taking it to a kid, and he drinks it. And my dad says, and who is this kid? And I say, his name's Chris. And he goes, and why are you taking this to Chris? And I said, because he told me if I didn't, he was going to kick my ass. And my dad said, really? So you're taking whiskey of mine to school so you won't get your ass kicked by some kid? And I said, yeah. Dad says, well, fine. He says, I said, well, I have some right now in the jar. You want me to give it back? And yeah. So I go get the jar, give it back to my dad. He says, puts it on the counter. He says, we're going to take that to Chris tomorrow, you and me. Whoa. Okay. So the next morning, get ready for school. My dad says, you ready to go? Yeah. I jump in the car. Normally I walk to school, ride my bus, or ride my bike. Today, Dad's taking me. We get to the school. He parks in the parking lot. Says, where's Chris? And I said, he's over there. He's the big kid sitting on the hill. And my dad walks over. And he walks over to Chris. And he looks at Chris. And says, are you Chris? And Chris stands up. and looks down at my dad. Again, Chris is 6'2", 6'3". My dad was like 6'1", but Chris was standing on the upper part of the hill. Okay. Chris outweighed my dad probably by 75, 80 pounds. My dad probably weighed 190. Chris probably weighed 260. Okay, 255, 260. He was a pretty big kid. So, anyway, my dad pulls the jar of whiskey out of his pocket and said, I brought something for you. And he turns the lid and he pours the whiskey at the feet of Chris and kind of shakes it. And every drop, he puts the lid back on and hands it to Chris and says, next time you want to drink whiskey, you be man enough, if you're man enough to drink whiskey, you be man enough to come over and ask to drink it with me. Don't make Jim bring you any more whiskey. You understand? And Chris says, yes, sir. No problem. He says, I mean it. No more. Don't threaten him. Don't beat his ass because he told on you, because I was going to beat his ass if he didn't. And Chris agreed. No one was going to do anything to me for telling on him. Dad goes home. Or gets in the car, goes to work. I go back to school. I come home that night. I'm grounded to my room. But I hear, and so I get home like around 3:30, and man, I'm stressing because Dad don't get home till like 5:30. Dad walks in at 5:30. I'm going, okay, here it comes. You know, here comes the punishment. What's going to happen? Am I going to be building a fence, cutting down a tree? I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't going to be fun. And I hear my mom and dad out in the kitchen, and my mom says to my dad, so Bob, decide what you're going to do about Jim and stealing all the whiskey? And I hear my dad go, Jesus Christ, Bonnie, the kid was bigger than me. I swear, if he'd have turned and said, bring me whiskey tomorrow, I would have. I don't blame Jim for getting him the whiskey. Okay? I was, I ain't doing nothing to Jim. He says, I never seen a junior high kid that big in my life. Okay? So that's one of the fun stories about me in my life. I know Chris remembers this. I posted it in a blog and told one of his friends about it. I said, you know who this Chris is? And his friend from that time period says, yeah, I know who you're talking about. And so he told Chris. And Chris says, yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So a few months later, at the school, during lunch, they played a game called Butt Buck. And what it basically was is two guys would stand, and then there'd be a line of guys bent over, hooked into one another, with the two guys at the front to hold them. And a group of other guys would take one at a time and run and try to jump and vault the last guy and try to break the line to the ground by landing on the backs of the guys that were bent over. Now, I had really strong legs because I've been riding a bike every day, 3 miles or more probably all day long, riding around on my bike since the time I was 5 years old. So I had some pretty strong legs from riding that bike, okay? And I ran fast, but I had Popeye legs. My calf muscles at the time were as big as my thighs. I was skinny, but my thigh muscles were huge compared to the rest of my leg. We're playing this game, Butt Buck, and I'm in the second guy. Okay, they got me toward the front because they figured that the guy can jump over me because I'm the smallest one in line. They don't want me up there in the 3rd, 4th, 5th position where someone's landing that weighs some money. But guess who flies in? Chris. Chris hadn't lost any weight from the time 3 months earlier. And Chris vaults and he gets over the first kid who's behind me, but he lands right on the middle of my back. And I held him. I didn't drop. I stayed firm. My legs didn't shake. My back hurt like hell, because it sprung it so hard, but my legs did not give, and I held him up. And I remember some of the other guys that were in it that were older. At the end of that little round, walk up and hit me. Man, you held him up. How the hell did you hold him up? I go, oh no, I just held him up. But so those are two memories of Chris. But anyway, so that's my life yesterday. Maybe tomorrow I'll do my life today. I want to thank you all for watching. Put a little like in there somewhere. Follow if you want. So I'm going to tell some more cool stories. I'm going to tell about times when I worked for the mayor of Kansas City, Missouri. I'm going to tell a story about the tragedy of the Hyatt Regency Hotel the night I was actually one of the first people in the doors of the building after the catwalks collapsed. I drove a cab, and I had a cab in the cab stand around the corner from the U-shaped drive that went through the big doors and went to where the catwalks were. But I was there, so I'll tell you the story about that one day when it's appropriate. I roamed a lot when I was a young kid, particularly between the ages of 14 and 18. I'd just go leave, grab my guitar, and I'd head out, and I'd go somewhere. End up in Cedar City, Utah, or Coral Gables, Florida, or in a bar in Alabama where you're the only white guy and you're singing for tips. That was a fun night. Never forget it. And so I got a lot of different things I'm going to talk about. So come back. Check out what I'm talking about. I'm going to do reactions eventually. I'm learning how to do things like how to put a picture right here, of what I'm reacting to, so that you can see at the moment I react what I'm reacting to. And I haven't figured out how to do that yet. So I'm trying to learn. If you know, send me a video. Okay. So anyway, that's it. That's my life yesterday, today, and why Justkilljim. Have a great night. God bless you all, and come back and see me sometime. Bye-bye.